Hey, good morning and welcome back to Sustainable Smallholding France. This video today is about a subject that is close to my heart, and that is how to plan and plant your orchard. There's a few things you need to know before you get started, but basically anybody with any size of land can plant either one apple tree or a small orchard. So let's get cracking. So the first thing you need to decide is what is the purpose of your orchard. So if you want to have some apples for eating, but also possibly for juicing and maybe making cider, then just keep watching this video because there's all sorts of information there. You might also want to decide whether you are planting just apple trees or you're going to have a mixed orchard. And by mixed, I mean you could have some elder, you could have cherries, pears, plums, any kind of top fruit. So you need to decide that first of all. What would I recommend? I would recommend, if you're planting a few trees, that you would plant one plum tree, because you'll get a glut of plums and there is only so many plums that somebody can eat, and a couple of different types of apple tree. So you could have an early eater, a late eater, and a dual purpose cooker and cider apple, and that will give you everything that you need to make a really nice, well-balanced juice or a really nice, well-balanced cider. So you've decided to plant this orchard. You know how much space that you have. The next thing you need to work out is what size of rootstock that you want for your trees, because the rootstock governs the overall height and spread of a tree and also how vigorous it will grow. So the rule of thumb is you want a rootstock that's going to grow a tree that is going to be accessible for you. So in the old-fashioned traditional orchards in southwest England and the Midlands, they tended to go for an M25 rootstock, which is absolutely enormous and no use at all if you have a normal or even large size garden, because you're going to have to use a cherry picker or something similar to get up to do any pruning and to harvest your fruit. Normally, I would advise people to go for an MM106 rootstock, which grows an average size tree that you can easily pick fruit from, either on the ground or with a short ladder or step up. So if you've got challenging conditions like we do here in southwest France, you may want to not choose the MM106, but go for the next rootstock up in size, which is an MM111. Now, these aren't easy to get. If you're going to graft your own apple trees, then you might want to grow your own rootstocks. That's another video, but MM111 can cope with challenging conditions such as extremes of temperature. Here in southwest France, we can go down to -15 in the winter and up to 42 in the summer, which is rather warm. MM111 is also good for waterlogged conditions. If you're in a flood area, then it's a good rootstock to pick, and it's also good in windy areas. So you have to judge if your soil is going to be challenging, if your aspect, if it's windy or exposed, is going to be challenging, and decide on what rootstock you want. By all means, if you've got an estate or a large area of land, or you want to grow apples commercially, go for the M25. So we're going to talk about varieties now, which should be the fun part of choosing which apples you want to grow in your orchard. But be aware that there are more varieties of apple available to buy than there are days in the year. So your task is before you. A couple of things just to help you choose. apples come in different flowering and pollination groups, which sounds really complicated, but basically some apples flower early, some apples flower in mid-season, and some apples flower late. And if you want to get good pollination, which you do, because if you don't, you won't get any fruit, then you need to have your apple choices, your varieties that you choose, cross-pollinating with each other. So if you're picking an early apple variety, you need to make sure that the apple tree that you plant next to it is either an early or a mid-season, and that way you're going to get cross-pollination. The fly in the ointment is any triploid apples. Now, triploids are very vigorous, so Bramley is a triploid, and Renette Orleans is another triploid. And for triploids, as opposed to diploids, which is what most of the everyday other varieties are, is that a triploid needs two different varieties to cross-pollinate it. It will do okay with one, but you'll get much better pollination and much more fruit if you have two. So if you want to plant a Bramley, you need to plant two other varieties beside it. So you might decide to pick a Discovery apple, you might decide to pick Brown Seedling or Spartan or something, but it's got to be completely different varieties, not just different trees. Okay, so varieties. I've got my glasses on because I am now going to refer to the book, because one of the reasons why I write these books and make the videos is so that I don't need to remember all the stuff that is up here. And if I have it in a good form in the book, then it means I can go back and read it. So, reading from the book, I'm on page 146. Right, Katie, Discovery, really, really good bomb-proof apple varieties. They're a bit early, so they don't store well, but they're absolutely fantastic for lunchbox apples, and they make a nice juice. Renette Orleans, I love this tree. This is a really good dual-purpose tree. You can eat the apples, they're fantastic with cheese, or if you like a nice crisp apple with a bit of a tang to it, it's perfect. But they're also good for juicing and for making cider. Now, you see, this is the thing. You put this thing in the orchard, it does three things. It also looks beautiful in the spring, and it looks lovely in the autumn when the fruit's on it. You can't lose with apples. So, you might want to pick some traditional local varieties. So I used to live in Cornwall, and the orchard that I had in Cornwall had Cornish gilliflower, what was it called? Can't remember. Cornish gilliflower, there's other Cornish varieties, Cornish mother, you've got varieties that come from Scotland. Bloody Ploughman is a really nice apple when you cut it open. It's got a pinky flesh. That's quite nice for juice, but the minute you do any heat treatment or fermentation, the colour kind of disappears. So it's nice if you're drinking it fresh, but them's the breaks. So other varieties, Cox is a real favourite, especially here in France. People can't get Cox apples here, so they buy Cox apple trees and they plant them. Now, in France, in the south of France, it's a bit drier. We don't have the same problems with fungal diseases. If you're in the UK, you'll find that Coxes don't really do well on the western side of the country because it's a bit damp and they get scab and canker, whereas if you're growing them on the eastern side of the country, they tend to do better. So you've got to read up a wee bit about your varieties and decide which ones you want. What else can I tell you? Pippins. Pippins are really nice apples. They're the ones that have got a kind of rough, greeny skin. Now, when you press them for juice, you don't get a whole lot of juice, but the juice is delicious and they go nice into cider as well. And a pippin is another nice apple that's really good with cheese. But a port, couple of walnuts, fantastic. So have fun choosing your varieties, do your homework, check which flowering groups that they're in. make a kind of plan, shortlist what you want. Remember, there are hundreds of varieties out there. And if you're watching this in a different country, not the UK or France, you'll have your own varieties that are suited to your particular locale. So Katie was originally bred in Scandinavia. You've got Mac Reds, which were grown in Canada. And Mac Reds, when I was a kid, you used to get Mac Reds in the supermarket, and then they were kind of phased out because they don't store well. They bruise, and shoppers don't want that. But you're growing your own orchard for your own delight, so you can really grow what you want. So enjoy and good luck planning and planting your orchard.